Okay, so I've done a bit more work on the character now, and actually added two morph targets for the elbow, make it work a bit better. I haven't done anything with the left elbow or left knee to as far as morph targets go. I'm just going to leave that up to yourself to sort out, so that I can move along. What I've done to show you the next tool is I've actually caused kind of a problem when it comes to skinning a character, and that's characters that aren't uniform shape, left and right side. The tool I'm about to show you could actually be used for pulling skin data off one character and putting it onto another as well, even if the characters aren't identical. They don't even have to have the same amount of vertices in each character for this to work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pretend the fact that we've actually skinned the right side of this character, and what I've done is below skin I've gone and scaled up with the soft selection. I've scaled up the left hand, so he's got this big club hand on the other side. What we're going to do is we're going to extract the skin data from the right side and place it on the left side. The mirror tool isn't going to work very well in this case because the vertices are so far off from one another that any interpolation that happens with the mirror tool simply isn't going to work, because if we go into our skin and turn on mirror mode, you can see that the vertices in the model aren't going to map over to the other side. Anywhere we see red on this other side here, we're not going to be getting the kind of skinning that we hope for. All the red dots basically mean that it's not finding the correct matches. So for all intents and purposes, that hand isn't going to merge over here. Now what we could do is, if it was just a little bit off, you could go in and increase the mirror threshold. And increasing the mirror threshold makes it look further and further and further out to find the match. But unfortunately, because this is so far out, you can see as I start cranking it up, what we're going to get is we're going to get a really, really bad interpolation. There's no way that the skinning from this hand, even if I crank this up, is going to actually skin it correctly, because it'll be taking a vertice somewhere here, mapping it across to a vertice somewhere over here, and as it gets further and further out, what's actually mapping to this one, we'll simply note it'll be just a guess from a whole bunch of different vertices there, and we'll end up with a hand that's just a pile of mush. So there's really no point to trying it that way, because it's just not going to work properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to use skin utilities. Skin utilities, under the utils panel, more, skin utilities, is going to allow us to extract the data of the model, all the vertex weights, and copy them into another mesh. So we'll pick the mesh we're going to work with. In this case, this one, we're going to say extract skin data to mesh. And if you notice right away, what it's done is it's actually made a second mesh. I'll just go select by name, right down to the bottom. Now we have skin data ogre geo body. You can see that we have a whole new mesh. If we save the file at this point, and no problem doing it, but what you'd find is the file size will go up enormously. That's because all of the skinning data has been stored into the vertex channels of this object. What we can do now is, if we're going to skin maybe another character, we could remodel this character and reform him into the shape of the other character without changing the vertex counts or anything. We could basically reform this mesh around the other mesh and then extract the data off this and place it back on. Now what we're actually going to do with this character, because it's a left-right issue, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to delete what we don't need. So we don't need anything from basically here up for this character. So I'm just going to go and delete the vertices that we don't need to deal with, that aren't going to mirror across properly. Change over to world, change our reference point, see if it'll fly out, will come up to world center, and then I'm going to use the mirror tool, mirror this hand over the other side, and you can see how far off it is. So what we can do now is we can use any tool we want to model this hand up and actually make it fit on the other side. A nice fast way to do that might be with the Xform an XForm modifier and XForm the character's right hand, and see if we can just scale it up a bit and get it to work a bit better for the other side. So let's see what happens with just bit of a scale. I'd use a soft selection on it originally, so we could have actually soft selected it here, and that might have worked a bit better. I could have used the exact same method. I did before to do it, to actually generate it in the first place. But just to illustrate that I can actually use any modeling method I want. I could also throw a lattice on there and try it with some sort of lattice. Pretty much anything you want to do it. So let's try it with an edit mesh as well. So I can use that same soft selection. Let's go into screen space here. This is a nice trick. Screen space, and set the pivot point again, and you can move it around. Get the pivot where you want. Oops. And let's just, that's not looking too bad. So we use any means available to us to get the two to sit one on top of the other. Now I'm not all that close right now. Might take a little bit more finessing to get this to sit perfectly on here. And it looks like we need to do some scaling sideways as well, or at least moving it sideways. Oops. Go back and use a better coordinate system for that. Tend to shift a lot back and forth between screen, local, view, world space, whatever happens to work best for the modeling purposes. So now I've got my new model a little closer to what I need. And what we're going to do now is we're going to extract the data off of this mesh and place it onto the underlying mesh. So all you need to do now is just simply select both meshes, back to our skin utilities, and use import skin data from mesh. Import skin data allows you to map names, and this is where naming conventions come in, are very, very important. Something I went back and did and simply didn't do on the original character was name the hands separately, but now I've gone back in and I've actually renamed the hands so that the hands are named correctly and we can see which ones they are. These are the target bones. These are the source bones. And what we want to do is we want to basically take the source bones that we're using. So that would be the right hand that we pulled off the original source, and we want to map that to the left hand. You can do match by name, but that'll do exact naming conventions. So if you had two characters that you were trying to pull the data off this character, drop it on another that were similar but different, had different vertex counts and whatnot, you could easily pull the data off and say match by name, and they could even have different prefixes and just say remove the prefixes of each one. In this case it would be the word ogre, because we could have ogre here and Mrs. Ogre on the other side, and we could match the two together. In this case I'm going to do it manually. We're going to match the right to the left, and then we want to make sure that we've actually got the correct names, and it'll match it up based on the order that you select them in. So we knew they were in order, so I just keyed select them and I got them. So now this is going to match basically right to left all the way down. Match by vertex, and there's a threshold again, and the threshold again is going to be based on the distance vertices are away from their when they're trying to match too. So it takes a little bit of playing around sometimes. Knowing your scene scale, the size of things, you can go in and check with a tape measure and see how many units it might be on average. We'll leave it at the default. You can also match by face, but I'm just going to say OK. And we can go in now and we can check the skin on this. And you can see that it's actually matched the vertices over as best as it can. Now, it's still going to be a rough guess. It's not going to be perfect, certainly, in any way, shape, or form. But it's going to try and match the bones over. I didn't scale up the entire hand, by the way. I just scaled up the mesh in this case, so all the bones don't fit in or anything. Obviously, they would have if the character had been set up this way intentionally. This is just a demonstration that you can actually pull data off one mesh, place it onto another, and they don't have to have the same vertex counts because it's using an interpolation method to get the vertices from one side to the other. Works very, very well. And I know a lot of people have used it for skinning one character and having lots of like characters and pulling the data off. You could also use it, maybe you have this character, you've skinned it, and now you've put different clothes on them, so you've put some tight-fitting clothes on them, and you want to get the information from this onto those clothes. You could simply extract the pieces you want and map them back on using the same bone names in this case, and you could map the data back onto it, and it would be a nice way to get your initial skinning started off. A very, very good time saving device when it comes to skinning characters.